And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the writing stream. We're going to be running I suppose I'm going to be running. You guys can help me out, okay? You guys can help me out. I'm going to be writing. We're going to be running. This is very, very professional stuff. We're going to be running a series of streams about writing. So I last did this, okay, back in 2018, I think it was. And that seems a very long time ago, doesn't it? I mean, it's like pre-COVID and everything like that, which is insanely long time ago. Feels like a completely different era. And the aim was back then. I mean, I have written books. I suppose, a published author in that sense. And as a result, I thought it might be fun to provide a bit of wisdom, if I could, to anybody who else was interested in writing and creating books, because it's something that I'm hugely enthusiastic about. Okay. And as I get older, and I am getting older, as you can see, I'm not a young person. There's a part of me that just like to, if you want to do writing and authoring and publishing and any of those kind of things, if I've got some words of wisdom or advice that I could impart, then why don't I do it? Which is kind of the point of these screens. So thank you very much for everybody who's turned up. So for those of you who are normally here, and there will be quite a few of you who are normally here. Dare I say it, I might be being a tiny bit more serious than normal, because usually I'm a very, very light-hearted sort of chap, and we do have a lot of fun, and we have an awful lot to monkey about. This will be, dare I say it, slightly more focused and slightly more to the point. So we'll crack on with it. For those of you who are in the stream who are new here, firstly, welcome. This stream is very much a family friendly stream. It's a kind of all inclusive kind of environment. There's no real agenda here. We're not trying to fix anything, change anything. It's really here because the Monday night stream that I do is for people who love writing, who love books, who love storytelling, who love creating things. It doesn't always have to be books. Actually, it's kind of storytelling in all its different forms. And what we've done over the years is we've talked about various topics. We have talked about the art of creating things, the pitfalls, the problems, the challenges that are involved in some of the odd things that happen because people find out that you're a writer, all those kind of bits and pieces. And we have actually on this stream in the past, years ago now, 2 years ago I think at least, collaborated and created our own book. So we have actually managed to achieve things as well. So that's quite good. So anyway, so welcome. It is 2 years ago, is it, Commander Terra Firma? Yeah. So some folks were involved back then as well. And back in 2018, I did a series. This is how this stream actually started off, because I thought, is there any interest in people, wanting to start out about writing? Not kind of okay, well, have I got the confidence? Is what's it all about? So where do I start? Trying to write a book. An awful lot of people do have the idea that it'd be I'd love to write a book. Actually, if you look on the list of kind of occupations of people, if I didn't have to work and do a, if you like, in quotes, proper job, what would you do with your time? And an awful lot of people put writing a book near the top of that list. Okay, so it's a sort of desire that an awful lot of people have, at least in potential. And the idea behind the stream is there's a whole bunch of people on the stream, myself included, who have actually written books and got them published and gone through that whole process. And the stream is here to impart that knowledge if there's people out there who are interested in listening to it. And obviously, if you're in the stream and you want to ask questions, just chuck them into the chat, because there's no such thing as a dumb question. Okay, it's just just chuck questions in. So if you're totally new to writing, welcome. If you've been here for ages and ages, obviously welcome as well. There is no such thing as a stupid question about this whole process. What I'm planning to do over the next few episodes is go through all the bits and pieces about the writing process, and kind of just talk people through them. There'll be some examples of things, and we could argue how different things work. We do have a lot of No such thing as a stupid question challenge, etc. There genuinely isn't, because sometimes the obvious questions are sometimes the obvious questions are kind of like, well, hasn't anybody asked that? I'm a bit nervous about asking it. It's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. We have in the past been focused kind of a lot on science fiction and fantasy, and that's kind of where my interest lies. But this hopefully the writing advice that we kind of impart through this is generically good advice for writing stories. It's going to be mostly focused on fiction, because whilst I do know a few authors who've done non-fiction books, it's not something I know a great deal about. I don't know a great deal about screenwriting. So I'm a kind of a novelist, I suppose. Just plain good old-fashioned paperback sort of stuff. And as a result, that's kind of where my expertise is. That's where it is. So again, the stream, designed to be very, very inclusive, designed to be a safe space. Everyone here is generally mostly well. Actually, I hesitate to use the word mature. But you know what I mean. They're nice people. It's a friendly environment to talk about writing, to talk about the ups and downs of that whole process, and sometimes we learn. I mean, I learn things from the people in the chat. So I am by no means an expert. I've done this a bit. I've done this for a couple of decades now, but. I learn stuff. I learn new stuff every day. So, but I have published some books. I have had some books that I've written and published, if that makes sense. So, I have some experience, and my wish really is to get more and more people into writing, because there's an awful lot of obstacles to writing. Some of it is the snootiness of other writers. And I see this a lot, which I don't like. Okay, is that say, well, yes, you need to do this and you need to do that before you could call yourself a writer or an author or something like that. Most of it's nonsense, all right, and it's safe to ignore it. But sometimes you need somebody maybe a little bit older just to say, no, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. It'll be fine. Okay. So and don't let anybody tell you you're not a writer. Okay, you always get better. Okay, so I mean, to take a good example, the stuff that I wrote years and years and years ago is genuinely rubbish. All right, it is rubbish. But at the time, I thought I was doing quite a good job, and at the time, for me, I was. Okay. You get better. One of the things that I always, a lot of people, I go to conventions, people say, what's the best piece of advice I can give to people who are writing and want to publish a book or write a book? And the best piece of advice I can give to anybody in that situation is keep writing, okay? Writing is not something you are good at straight away. It's like anything complex. It's like any piece of art. You can't. I've used this analogy on the stream before, but you can't just pick up a violin tomorrow and go, right, I'm going to be a great violinist. You just can't, okay? Because you've got to learn how to play the violin, okay? And the violin is a very, very complicated instrument. You have to be pitch perfect, you have to be mathematically precise, you have to have some talent, and you have to practice, okay? I think somebody somewhere basically said that you've got to put 1,000 hours of craft into any piece of art before you can say you've kind of mastered the essentials of that craft, whatever it happens to be. Writing is no different, okay? You cannot wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to be a prize-winning novelist, because you can't, all right? You just can't start and then be there tomorrow morning. You have to practice. You have to write some stuff. You have to have that stuff critiqued, and you have to look at it objectively over the years and get better and work out what you did wrong and improve. So there. Is it? It's 10,000. Is it? Perfection is a road, not a distance. It's very true. Okay. And an awful lot of people get discouraged earlier on. Okay, so don't get discouraged. You will be your own best critic over time, because you'll look back at the earlier stuff and go, oh my God, did I write that? But every so often you'll go, actually, that bit was quite good. So all those sort of things. So yes, this stream is kind of an introduction to that whole series. The sort of things that we will be covering are common mistakes. Okay, things that when you're starting out you get wrong. Okay, and there's loads of things in that category. That would be an entire stream, that one, and it is quite amusing to go through it in a nice way. Any criticism I give on this stream is genuinely meant to help people improve. Okay, I'm not basically pointing out, look at all the stupid writers who've just started out, look how rubbish they are. That is not the intention. Okay, it's basically here's stuff that I did myself. Okay, and I look back on that and think, oh my god, don't do that. So stuff I've learned over the years, and things that you can then learn to avoid. At least you can see them. Okay, I shouldn't do that. That's considered not a great thing. How do you go about? If you want to write a novel, how do you go about planning one? Where do you get the ideas from? What about characters? What about description? What about what about this? What about the background? How do I do the research? How do I organise the research? Where do I go to check things? All those kind of stuff is all in the whole process of building. There's things like description. How much is enough? How much is too much? What kind of novel am I writing? Is it? What about characters? How do I create characters? How do I make the dialogue work? Now, how do I do world building? Do I need to do world building? All those kind of things are the sort of stuff that we'll explore over the next few weeks. And then there's that whole process of, okay, well, I've written the thing. I finally got the end and I've written the end. Now I've got to do that magical thing called editing. Okay, and that's where a lot of the hard work and the graft starts coming in. Okay, so what do we mean by editing, and what do we mean by drafts, and how do we know when we're finished, and what do we do with it? And who does it go to at various different stages of its production? All of those kind of bits and pieces we will cover in the streams. So those are the sort of elements, if you like, that we will go through. But to start off, okay, so for those of you who are kind of thinking, well, it must be fantastic to be a writer, Drew. Congratulations, you must be rich, you must be famous. After all, you've written. I've published 9 books thus far. Okay, 9 full-length novels and a few short stories. So clearly, I must be incredibly rich and famous, right? No. That's not how it works. Okay, so myth number 1. I'm going to debunk this for you all straight away. If you are thinking, well, I'm going to write a book, and by the way, apologies if you can hear some birds in the background. They are genuinely there. It's just that it's because it's now late spring in the UK. It's quite warm, and the PC generates quite a bit of heat. So I have the window open, and there's a tree outside my study window where the birds, and it's just about dusk, I think, about now, and they're doing their thing. Okay, so if you can hear something, why are there some birds in the background? Well, the birds are just part of the ambience. So do enjoy the birds. They'll probably quieten down in about half an hour or so once the sun has gone down. So why do you write Fortune and Glory, kid? Fortune and Glory. So for the vast number of aspiring authors, aspiring writers, etc., 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 writing a book is not, I repeat, is not a route to fame and fortune. Okay. It just genuinely isn't. The odds are enormously stacked against you in terms of getting a large return on investment for the amount of time you put into your novel. Of all the let's say work things that I've done in my life, the amount of time and energy I poured into my books has financially offered me the least return on investment of everything I've ever done in my entire life. Okay, so let's just level that one out. Okay, I have made a bit of money on my books, but it's not enough. It's not enough to pay the mortgage. It's certainly in the UK now, and probably the rest of the world as well. It's not really enough to pay the energy bills. So all of those things. Okay, so there are some authors clearly who do make vast amounts of money. So if you could plot a graph, and I'm going to do this manually with my hand here because I've got no special effects on this this stream at present. If you could plot a graph, you're going to have to imagine me drawing a line on the screen here. If you could plot a line, the revenues of all the authors from sort of 0% going up to 100% over here. I've kind of done it backwards, but because I can't think backwards on the screen. I should get some technology with this, but I should draw some but I'm not big into that either. I use words, okay, I don't do graphics. So you start at 0%, and then you get up to kind of 99%, and there's a few people who made a bit of money. 99% of authors have made a bit of money, and then the last 1%, those probably less than 0.5%, maybe even 0.1%, okay, have made some serious money out of writing. Okay, so you're talking, enough money to be kind of like, oh wow, that's the thing. So for the vast majority of us, we'll make some money. You'll go like, oh, that's nice, maybe. But if you're planning on being a just sort of J.K. Rowling or J.R.R. Tolkien or George R.R. Martin, they've all got RRs in them, haven't they? Maybe that's the trick. You need an R in your name. Some of them get lucky. Okay, some of them get lucky, and that's partly skill, because you've got to have a decent book, clearly. All right, but a lot of it is luck as well. You're right place at the right time, right genre. Connections in the industry, promotions, all those kind of things. Sometimes the stars align for particular people. The chances of any individual author starting out making a lot of money are vanishingly small, I'm afraid. So set your expectations appropriately. If you're coming into this thinking, I tell you what, I'm going to write a book, that's the way to solve all my financial woes, I'm afraid you're very, very, very likely to be sorely disappointed. So be careful of that one. It sounds straightforward. I'm going to write a book. Okay. Here's another thing. It's not straightforward. It's an awful lot of work, and at the end of the day, there's no guarantee anybody's going to like it. All right, because you may think it's wonderful, but in the court of public opinion, that may or may not be the case. So it's one of those things you're going to have to push out there and see. Okay. Now the second thing about writing a book is, I've kind of already alluded to it, right? It's hard work. All right, it is work. Okay. Don't be under the. I mean, there's this lovely ideal, and I aspire to it, but I haven't got to it. A novelist has this beautiful cottage in the countryside somewhere. Change it to whatever you think is the nicest ideal. But in my case, it would be a sort of a country cottage far away from main roads. Maybe in the Sussex Downs, nice mountains in the background, sun setting or sun rising, birds chirping. I've got the birds. You're there with your old-fashioned typewriter maybe, and you're punching out nice water bill, yeah, exactly, all those sort of things, a bit of water flowing in the background. No distractions, tea and crumpets on the side, whatever it happens to be. And you're writing there, and you're writing your novel, and everything is, and you're just punching out thousands and thousands of words at a time, and everything's glorious. Okay, that's the sort of, that's the dream-like. What people are mountain, kind of not mountains in Sussex, no, maybe hills. Hills is probably more accurate, isn't it? Mountains in Sussex might be a bit. I'm obviously imagining something. So that's the ideal. Never happens. Okay, never happens. That whole thing about the writer just being in a glorious place, because the doorbell rings, okay, or the dog barks, or families happen, or there's noise from next door, or you don't have a tranquil cottage in the Sussex Downs, which most of us don't. And tried writing in the nice places, Cyril, and got distracted by the views. So it's depending on what you're trying to do, it may not work. So writing is one of those things that you've got to squeeze in usually around other stuff. Okay, bearing in mind it probably isn't going to pay well. You may, realistically, for the vast majority of us, you're going to have to fit it around a paying job. Okay, which means you don't get to choose when you do it. You're going to have to squeeze it in, and that's obviously with all the other distractions that are going on, like trying to stay alive, and get food and have a house and pay rent or whatever it happens to be. So different people will have different ways of doing it. I used to write on the train. I've written a lot of books on the train. I used to commute to London a lot, and I did a lot of writing on the train years ago. It's work. Okay, it is work. Parts of it are fun. Parts of it are definitely fun. Okay, creating characters and writing stories and having dialogue and blah 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 blah. That's the nice bit, but there's a lot of work. okay, involved in taking your story and turning it into something that's actually publishable, and that's where the fun also begins, all right, in terms of all the other bits and pieces you go. So don't be discouraged by all this if you're new to this. It's like, oh my god, it's totally destroying all the nice stuff I think about writing. There is a lot of joy to be gained from writing, a lot of joy, a lot of fulfillment, okay, a lot of purpose, I would say, okay. I tried writing on the train, but they moved too quickly. There's a lot of fulfillment. There's a lot of edification that comes out of writing and getting your thoughts and your stories from your head into either a computer or a notepad or whatever you're using. But don't be under any illusion that it's a lot of hard work. Okay, it's a lot of hard work. Writing a book takes time, takes graft. Even if you're writing a relatively short book, so let's take something, let's for sake of argument, let's take a Harry Potter novel. Okay, the first Harry Potter novel, The Philosopher's Stone, as it is in the UK. I think the Sorcerer's Stone in the US. It's about 60 to 70k words, 60 to 70,000 words. So that's a physical amount of typing that you've got to do. Now, most people don't, as a rule, type anything that long very often. When I was at university, a dissertation, i.e. a detailed essay on a particular topic was 10,000 words. So you're already talking about a document that's 6 or 7 times longer than a detailed essay. And the typical essay that you might have done at school would be maybe 2,000-3,000 words tops. So you're talking quite a big thing just in terms of the physical activity of typing it in. Now my novels are a bit epic. Okay, so my novels generally are 100k, and I'm just about getting into them. So I try and set about 120k as my kind of that's my novel. That's me. Okay, and there's a few rules about that. That you can learn and then cheerfully ignore. But there's a certain amount of text you've simply got to type in. Okay, if unless you're writing it by hand. So there we go. First time chat from Nays. Hey, good to see you. Thank you very much. Well, welcome to the stream. Lovely to see you. Genuine question: what takes up more time, writing books or maintaining a busy streaming schedule? Streaming is time consuming. I mean, so streaming is it takes obviously you have to do it, which takes a certain amount of time, which we're currently in the midst of. But there is planning and prep for streams and trying to come up with topics and working out the sort of things you want to talk about, having a vague structure and all those sort of things. There's setting up the equipment, trying to do the sound and the video, and the technology is all part of that. Okay, so. That is time consuming as well. I think in some ways streaming is very similar to writing in the sense that a lot of people think, oh, I'll just be an internet streamer, I'll be a famous YouTuber. It's work, okay? At the end of the day, it's still work. You have to think about it, you have to plan, you have to prepare, you have to try and make your content interesting. Are you an interesting person to listen to? Hopefully I am. All of those things you have to engage with. You have to, why should somebody spend 2 hours of their life watching me? In the generic sense, composing MIDI songs and things. And okay, so what makes your content different from somebody else? Why should somebody watch you doing a thing? Do you have some wisdom to impart? Do you have some knowledge? Are you an interesting person to listen to? Is your voice not entirely irritating? All those sort of things. So streaming is a creative thing, I think. But it takes work. It is work. Okay, it's I'm sitting here in front of a camera, and I quite enjoy it actually, but it's still work. I'm looking around here, all the technology that I've acquired over the time, and I've got 2 monitors here. I've got a PC. I've got this. I've got that. I've got tripods here with microphones. I've got lights. And, I've got a green screen behind me. And it's taken me a while to figure out how all that stuff works and make use of it. It's kind of the same with writing a book. Okay, well, you just think, well, I'm just going to write a book. Yeah, but you've got to have dialogue, you've got to have characters, you've got to have descriptions, you've got to have pacing, you've got to have viewpoints, you've got to have all these things go into making a book. And it's stuff. Now, let's say I haven't put you off already. Oh my God, that sounds diabolical. No way am I going to write a book. You'll find if you are a storyteller like me. The stories are always popping up in your head, and you think, "Oh, I need to do something with that. I need to do something. I need to get that down on paper somehow." And you may not want to write a book. You might want to write a screenplay. You might want to make a movie. You might want to make a short story. You might want to make an animated YouTube video. All of these sort of things. They're all valid creative outlets. And the beauty of today, compared to even a few decades ago, is things like YouTube, things like streaming, things like Amazon, for example. I know we vilify Amazon a lot for being this big mega corporation, but Amazon has done an awful lot more in many ways to democratize the accessibility of storytelling than many other organizations. Now, I mean, I can say an awful lot of things that are wrong about Amazon from a monopolistic perspective, but Amazon provides you, as a writer, completely accessible tools for creating your novel, uploading your novel onto the internet, selling your novel to a worldwide audience, marketing your novel, setting up an author page. All those things are built in. They're all there. Now, Amazon takes a cut of any earnings, clearly, because that's how they make their money. But you can now do it. You don't need a traditional publisher unless you want one. You can write a book, get it out there on the internet, press the there you go, upload button. People can then buy it, and then if your book is any good, hopefully you'll be successful. Now, the trick is the process between, right, I'm going to start a book, and the publish on Amazon button. There's a lot of stuff in between those two pieces, which is definitely worth knowing about. Okay, and some of the stuff is not all that obvious. Okay, especially when you're first starting out, it's just isn't. What makes a good book? Define good. There are certain things that people will expect from a book. Let's take obvious things. Spelling and grammar is always a good place to start. I know it's really boring, but we will cover a little bit of spelling and grammar. Spelling and grammar. Sorry, let's get that right. Because a certain level of that is important. Now, you do not, and I repeat, you do not need to have advanced literary qualifications to be an excellent writer. In fact, it's probably easy for you to say. It's not apparently. You don't. Okay. I've written 9 pretty successful novels, and I have a C grade O level. Or GCSE as it would now be known nowadays. That's my only literary qualification. Okay, I have a C grade in English. All right, that's all I have. I don't have an A grade. This is a secondary school qualification, or I suppose in the States it would be a high school qualification. I don't know what the equivalents are in the US, but basically an O level or a GCSE in the UK is the exams you do at the age of 16. So I have a C grade, i.e. not brilliant, passed but not brilliant, in English literature. Actually, I don't even think I've got an English language one, and so I am not highly qualified whatsoever. Okay, not highly qualified at all. I don't have an A level or a higher education. I certainly don't have a degree in English or a master's or even a PhD. I have none of those. Okay, so in terms of giving advice, I am totally unqualified. The only thing I do have is I have published some books, and people have read them and gone, I liked your book. It was good. I enjoyed it. So that's, so don't let anybody basically say, well, yes, but you're not a proper writer because you haven't got a qualification. That's just snooty academia, and I'm not a big fan of that. There's nothing to say that those sort of qualifications won't necessarily help you be a better writer. They might, but they're certainly absolutely not required. Okay, so I think you do need to be able to string a few sentences together. So you do need to have an understanding of basic grammar and sentence construction, and knowing the difference between a noun and a verb and an adjective and an adverb. Those sort of things kind of you do need, all right? So, but you should be able to get that at the GCSE level. So I would say a GCSE O level, whatever the US equivalents or the whatever your country's equivalents are, because I'm conscious this is an international audience we have on this stream. Whatever those things are, that's the sort of level of formal education stroke qualification you need to write a book. Nothing more than that. The rest of it all comes with experience and getting better at the craft of writing. So that's good. So you don't need them. They might help, but you don't need them. So I've personally never been on a writing course. Neither have I been to any, advanced A-level stroke degree stroke PhD or master's level English literature things. Whenever I've listened to people who do have those qualifications, I generally have no idea what they're talking about when they discuss things anyway. It all sounds extremely impressive, but when you look up their credentials, they haven't actually published any books. So I kind of go, well, it obviously hasn't worked for you, so I don't see why I should bother. Zensob says, I failed English, O-level English 4 times. Congratulations, well done. That's quite the achievement. Man monks have a D grade in English, but then again, I have 3 degrees. Well, and education is a funny thing. So some of it will be useful, but not all it's all that applicable to writing. What I think you need to have as a writer is a desperate, strange urge within you to tell stories. I think it comes down to that. If you haven't got something in you that's desperately crying out in your psyche in some fashion to say, I've got to write a story, I've got to get this out, I've got to, something that just will not leave you alone over days and months and years perhaps, then you probably find you won't have the drive to do it, because there will be times when you're trying to write a book that you just look at it and go, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this pain? Nobody's ever going to read this. You'll have you'll have those periods of self-doubt, okay, which will be very strong and punishing. And an awful lot of writers fall at that hurdle, okay. They start off and they maybe get 15, 20, 25,000 words into their novel, and they give up because the self-doubt creeps up on them and go, what am I doing? Why am I writing this? Nobody's ever going to like this. This is rubbish, etc., etc., etc. And what I hope with this sort of stream and the series of streams that are coming up after it is to kind of keep those writers going, all right? Because we need more voices, okay? We need more voices, particularly from the younger folk, who've got stories to tell. And I feel that our kind of internet, always on short, sharp media bites of a few seconds duration, really aren't serving the whole kind of book creation thing very, very well. People like me now. you may be surprised to observe that I am I'm a white middle class male, probably from a reasonably privileged background compared to an awful lot of people. My type of person is fairly well represented in the literary world, and I'm very keen for to promote other types of individual. Okay, I can't do much other than basically say this is what I've learned about the craft of writing over the years, and there you go. There's my knowledge. Make use of it. Go and write your own books. It would be nice to hear things. I see so many. I go around to people's houses and friends I visit and various other bits and pieces, for various reasons, genuine reasons. I'm not a cat burglar. And one of the things and I've dropped my kids' friends off, and and they've been invited in for a cup of tea, and we chat with their parents and things. And what I notice is almost everywhere, I would say 97%, maybe 95%, something around that. No books anywhere in the house that you can see. No books, just no books. No bookcases. There's a TV. There's some computer games. There'll be a few trinkets about, maybe some paintings, maybe some abstract art. No books anywhere. I asked. I've been into schools on a number of occasions, and I've asked, the kids, and some of them are young, and some of them are slightly older, and I asked them, what was the last book you read? What was the last book you read? And almost always it's the same answer. It's whatever the school set last. There are a few, fortunately, kids who say, I read this and I read that, and they are the exception, and it's really good to see them because you can see their eyes have lit up. I read this book, that was really cool. But so many just don't read. Just don't. The idea of reading a book well, that sounds like an awful lot of hard work. Why would I want to read a book? And I worry that, you know, if they're not reading, why would they become writers? Because they don't get what a book is about. Okay, last book I read, Face. Yeah, exactly. You know, and so you know, in this kind of online world where we have, you know, we have things like TikTok, and we have things like Twitch, and we have things like YouTube, and things like that. There is, you know, maybe books are, you know, in a slightly different category, but you know, there is creative talent out there, and it'd be nice to funnel that into meaningful things. Why would you write a book anyway? You know, it's to get across a story. You know, it's to get across some viewpoints, it's to get across some considerations, just to entertain people. That's what storytelling is about. You might have a bit of an agenda in terms of social change, or commentary on religion, or commentary on government. That's a valid thing to do. You might just be a bit like me. I just like entertaining people. Here's a story of adventure and daring do, with no particular motive in mind. You might be wanting to just, you know, do some fan fiction. You know, your favourite TV series. I'm going to write my own little extra bit of that. That's a valid thing to do. All those things are valid reasons to write a book. But I just don't see so many younger folk getting into it now. You know, most of the writers I interact with, and that's probably partly my age anyway, but most of the writers and people I interact with, you know, generally are people of a certain age who like books and write books. But I do bump into them on Twitter and various other places. I'm very keen to go and say, you know, just keep writing, keep telling stories, show us what you're doing, because it would be sad if we, you know, the only people writing are old middle-aged white blokes like me. That's very much not the way it should be. You know, we need more voices. We need younger people coming in and doing stuff. So if you are a younger person, or you know, if you've got a story to tell and you want to tell it, please do it. Okay. Sean looks around, sees nothing but books, cameras, and screens. So I've always got a book on the go. Here's another piece of advice, actually, if you want to be a writer, is read. Okay, if you don't read, it's going to be very hard to be a writer, because you need to absorb lots of different types of authors who've been there and done that and made a book before you, to sort of see the sort of things that they do. Why is that book a good book to you? Is it engaging? Is it the characters? Is it the story? What is it about the book that makes you want to read it? Because that's the thing that's going to inspire you. And even if you're old, well, it's a good point, Glenn. You know, even if you're old, if you're watching this, they go, oh well, he just read me off. I'm 60 and I'm not going to be able to do it. No, okay, we need to hear voices from all ages, all genders, all groups of people. We just need more stories. There's stories to be told. I've got lots more stories to tell. Cyril mentioned, it makes a very good point. Okay, so possibly younger people don't have the comfortable financial space to take the spare time to write. That is a problem. Okay, I think it's certainly an obstacle. I don't think it's an insurmountable obstacle, because if we all look at the amount of time we spend prevaricating, and I'm being nice there, and what I really mean is scrolling on Facebook. Okay, but prevaricating, let's use that word. We have spare time. Okay, we all have some spare time that we could put to better use. And if you are even vaguely serious about wanting to write now, and I did it as a young lad. Okay, so I've got here. Okay, some of you have seen this before. So this is my archive. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that. There we are. Drew's original stories from the 1980s. I have a great big A4 folder here with all the stuff that I wrote pre-computer. Well, kind of pre-computer. Some of it's pre-computer. I have in here. Let me just see if I can find it. I kept it because. Mostly because I didn't throw it away, and this is me. You know, this stuff here. This is literally my first story that I ever wrote. Okay, pre-computers. This is about 1983, when I was 13. Okay, so I was supposed to be studying for my exams, but what I was really doing was writing stories. And you know, it's, I don't know how many pages is it? Maybe about 20 pages. And it's all handwritten, as you can see, and on very, very yellowed paper now. But I found time as a 13-year-old to go and do some writing. Okay, I am a hoarder. So let's go. I have a box. There we go. I have a box, and it is full of. Let me just get. I kept it because, and I'm glad I did. I mean, there we go. There's my collected youthful writings. Okay, I'm not going to read any of it to you. No, absolutely not, because it is, of course, entirely appalling. But I keep it because it shows me that I was a writer from the age of 12, 13, basically. Okay, and then I didn't have a computer. I didn't even have a typewriter back then. I wrote it with a pen on a piece of paper. Okay, and the unpublished works, yeah, they are pretty. I mean, I was 12 at the time, so certainly a lot of the early stuff is very teenaged angst. Okay. That sort of stuff you're thinking, oh no. I mean, what else is a 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy who's obsessed by space games and rescuing the princess going to write about? Okay, and I do all the classic things that you shouldn't do. You're the hero of the story, and formulaic endings, and pinching things off the TV, and even names and spaceships and the thing. I did everything wrong. Okay. But I did it. Okay, I wrote a story from beginning to end. I achieved a thing. That will never be published, thank God. But it just shows what it shows me as a much older person now is that back then I had this thing that was making me write. Why was I doing it? Okay, why was I doing it? Because I wanted to tell a story. Now, I was never brave enough at the time. Maybe this is a good thing to put that in front of it. I don't think anybody else other than me has ever read those things. Okay, but it's what is interesting, having now published some actual real books and got them out in front of people. Obviously of somewhat higher quality than the scribblings of a 12-year-old. What I've noticed is that some of the themes and some of the characters that I have in my, shall we say, professional novels today do have their roots in the work that I did back then. I've seen a few names which I've obviously subconsciously channeled over the years. So for those of you who know my Shadewood saga, there's a character called Maru, who actually is there's a theme on this stream that I'm super nasty to Maru. So let me just, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. But in this story, which is from my records dated about 1985, the character up there, I don't know if you can see that, right at the top, Maru forced Choso from his mind and filled it with the courage. Anyway, stuff. So Maru and Choso are characters who ended up in Shadewood, okay, which is my own modern novel that's actually done properly. So there's roots back in the work that I did when I was a child or a young man or a teenager that still exists today. Okay, Maru's been talked to by Drew. Yes, poor Maru. Did I believe Maru as a teenager? I probably did actually. So when you're creating characters, sometimes they have roots. Okay, you don't just I'm just make a character up. They have roots in your own psyche and your own experiences and your own works in the past. So another piece of advice: even if you write something today, okay, or if you're starting out writing now, keep it. Okay, even if it's definitely junk. Okay, because all that stuff in there is junk. All right, it's of no value to anybody other than me in terms of my nostalgia value. It's useless. It's of no value, right? But it catalogues for me an improvement in my ability to write over the years. And there is some stuff in there which I go, oh wow, I did have the essence of that idea back then, and I've refined it and improved upon it over the years, almost without realising it. So never throw anything away, okay? Because you never know when you might go back to it. And I have gone back and read my old stories, and some of them are excruciatingly bad. But in the midst of all that excruciatingly bad stuff, there are small little nuggets of there's the character. There's where the character started, and I've built upon it and made it much more sophisticated over the time. So don't throw anything away. Don't throw anything away. First time chat from Craven Core. Good enough for Dr. Seuss or Shel Silverstone. Good enough for me. Yes. If you're serious about writing a book, there's going to be something in you that compels you to write. So you will find time to do it. Okay, you will find time to do it. If you can take a look at what you spend your idle time doing, how much time do you spend scrolling through your phone on Facebook? How much time do you spend on Twitter? How much time do you spend watching YouTube videos in the day? How much time do you spend watching TV? All of those things, how much time you spend on TikTok, all the other online things that you can do nowadays, playing games, whatever it happens to be. Now, there's nothing wrong. I'm not here to berate people and basically say, well, that's outrageous, you shouldn't be scrolling through Facebook or watch, because I scroll through Facebook. Okay, I watch a YouTube video. I have a few channels that I subscribe to and I enjoy their content because sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's amusing and informative. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can take a good long hard look at that. Okay, how much time do I watch spending live streams? Exactly. You can take a good long hard look at that and say, okay, well, can I take an hour out of that, or 2 hours out of that, or maybe 4 hours out of that a week, and go, actually I'm going to use that to write a book. That's a personal choice. Okay, what do you want to do with your time? Your time, to a degree, we all have to earn a living, we all have to keep food on the table, all of those things, but we do have some time to ourselves, even if it isn't very much. And in that time, we have a choice as to what we do. Now you can, and I find it hard. We all find it hard. I'm tired after I've done all that work. I just want to chill out and relax. Completely understand that. Writing for me, however, can actually be quite relaxing. I like, in some time, getting in front of the computer and just saying, I'm gonna write a story in the next half an hour. I'm just gonna do some stuff, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. If you get yourself into a writing habit, you may, and it certainly works for me, you may be the sort of person who goes, okay, well, this is my writing time. And your brain switches into that mode and go, okay, right, so it's creative time, is it? Let's go. When you're gone, perhaps your son can rework your unpublished works into a series. We'll see. Hopefully that's a while away. My biggest distraction or excuse for getting back to writing is working all day and then feeling like I should spend the time with the family and wife. I guess looking for the perfect time to write. There's no such thing. There isn't a perfect time to write. It has to be a compromise. And for a writing habit like the ones in underwear, yeah. and that, it's always a question of priority. So if you have a partner, a wife, husband, significant other of whatever type, that's an important part of your life, okay? And you need to factor those sorts of things in. Have they got a hobby that they go off and do, and you've got some spare time? Can you work that into your routine? All of those sort of things. So making space for writing is a big part of that as well. I'm not doing the washing. I'm writing a book. That one may not pass muster, I'm afraid. With me, I can't just turn on the laptop and write. I have to be in the mood or to write, or have an idea for a story that's popping in my head. So yeah, sometimes you have to, you can have to put yourself into a space where your brain knows you're going to be there, and sometimes things come to you at unusual times. I frequently wake up in the night and go, damn, there's a really good idea for a story. So I now have a notepad by my bed, just in case, because you know what, I'll remember that in the morning. You don't. All right, so don't ever fall for that. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you have a brilliant idea for a book, write it down then, okay? Because if you don't, it will be gone in the morning. All right, guaranteed. So I have a notepad with me, and with a mobile phone nowadays, you can easily make a note of something very, very quickly. Make sure you do, because you will not remember it. Okay, you will not remember it. Some people will find a lot of comfort in solitude. I like to work in a closed room without too many distractions. And when I'm in the zone, I'm completely oblivious. A bomb could go off and I wouldn't notice. When I'm in the zone. But that's me, because I'm quite OCD. I'm quite focused. And Mad Mark Self makes a very good point. When I was in university and trying to solve a problem, the answer came to me only the train home, whilst I wasn't thinking about it. So sometimes you have to take your brain off the hook. I've actually had my subconscious solve plot conundrums for me. I've been struggling with a scene during the day, trying to write it. It just isn't working. I go to bed, go to sleep, and then my subconscious somehow works on it when I'm asleep. And when I wake up in the morning, I've had the go, that's how to do it. And I'm like, where did that come from? And it's like your brain has been working on it overnight for you. So occasionally you can tap into interesting little capabilities in your mind like that, which is quite interesting. Mighty Second is the first time chat. My biggest hurdle is coming up with a believable antagonist. I can write slice of life all day, but that generally doesn't make for a good book. So speaking of family distractions, early finish tonight, says Cyril. No problem. Take care. Good to see you. So Mighty Second. It's we'll go into some depth in terms of characterization in a future stream, but it's a good point. It's a good point. But if you're good at slice of life kind of stuff, that's a skill, okay? An awful lot of people would be very envious of that. So don't put that in a kind of that's no use to writing bucket, because it is. If you can write something that's compelling and you know, but is grounded in reality, that's a really, really good thing. I thought it was my dog who works out solutions for word plot. No, Glenn, my dog comes up with the ideas. Okay, so a lot of people at conventions. There's always interesting, actually, when you go to a convention as a writer or an author that vaguely somebody's heard of you, you get some very odd questions. People like, well, where did you get your ideas from? And I get very flippant because I'm like that. And I say, I ordered them from Tesco's. They do packs of 10. And then they look at you as if you're like, what? I said, no, I'm kidding. Where do ideas come from? I don't know where ideas come from. It's very, very strange. But in the case of my dog, I quite often get ideas for plots when I'm out on the dog walk. Okay, so I take my dog for a walk in the morning, about half an hour, 40 minutes. And it's a nice sort of countryside, mostly countryside walk. And then I get back to the house, and then I have a cup of tea and stuff and feed the dog, etc. But quite often on the dog walk, and I like being out in nature. Nature helps me to pick up ideas. It's inspiring. The old sun coming up and the dew on the tree, on the grass and the trees and things. All that sort of stuff I find quite inspiring for the sort of stories that I like. And I get ideas in my head when I'm walking the dog, because it's very quiet. There's nobody else around. No distractions other than just nature doing its thing early in the morning. So I find that quite inspiring. I get quite a lot of my inspiration that way. Your sources of inspiration may be very different. So there we are. Mine is stalled because I have no idea how to do the next bit. A bit of more than I can choose, says Craven Call. Okay, so we'll, as part of the stream, we'll have some sessions where bring out your dead, or bring out your wounded, bring out what are your problems. And we'll see if the power of the combined internet, and those birds are getting very noisy, they sound like they're having an argument about it. Let's see if we can solve them. We can have a writer's Q&A. Let's make up let's try and help, because we have an awful lot of writers on the stream. There's crowdsourcing of problem solving for plot conundrums and writing books and all sorts of things. Bring out your dead. Drew's dog is telepathically inspiring him based on the days. So I don't know where my dog is doing, so I'm going to miss my dog when it finally passes on. Poor old thing. She had her 14th birthday this week, a couple of days ago, and she's 3 years beyond her best before date. Poor old thing. She's a lovely chocolate Labrador. They normally live to about 10, 11 years, and she's now 14. So she's very slow. Our dog walks are becoming shorter and shorter and shorter because there's only so much length she can take. So I can't go as far as we used to. But she's doing all right. She's still healthy and happy, which is the main thing. So. So where do you get your ideas from? I have no idea. Okay, the ideas just pop into my head from things. Now I am inspired by. Okay, so as a child back in 1977, I went to see this amazing new film called Star Wars, for example. I remember that so vividly as a child. It made such a dramatic impact on me. The original Star Wars movie. Space lightsabers rescuing the princess. I mean, wow, that was amazing. So that's huge influences on me, and I was introduced to Jules Verne and Arthur C. Clarke and Anne McCaffrey and Elizabeth Moon and all sorts of other amazing authors. Margaret Atwood, actually, I've gone back and reread The Handmaid's Tale recently. And that's an amazing book. Okay, if you haven't read that, go read it because it really is good. Daphne Du Maurier is probably my favourite ever writer, with her Rebecca book. That's that to me is just a masterpiece of suspenseful storytelling. So if you have, it's not science fiction for those of you who know me. Rebecca it's kind of a weird ghost story almost. It's a bit quite hard to describe Daphne Du Maurier, but it's an excellent book. And so you will have writers that who have gone before you. Sadly, most of them are, in my case, most of them are dead now. I never got to meet them as people. But you've read their books. You've seen a little bit of their soul and stuff, and they've inspired me. I'd love to be able to write a story like that and have people come up to me and go, "I really enjoyed your story." And so, it could be past writers that have inspired you and given you ideas to say, I'd like to do something kind of like that. That would be really, really good. We had Labrador live until 18. Oh, well, maybe she's got a little bit longer to go. She still seems to be okay at the moment. That's good. Despite Drew's annoyance with the birds chirping, little did he know the revolution had just begun. There's a story idea. Very good, Dr. Chris Dempsey. I want to hear what happened next, but it's got to be nice to me. Okay, that's very important. So bringing it back round again. So is there lots of money in it? Probably not. Is it hard work? Yes, it is. Okay. Will people look at you a little bit oddly if you say you're writing a book? Yes, they will. Okay. A lot of people. Why? Why are you writing a book? It's a curious thing. Writing a book. It is not. It's not a mainstream activity. A lot of people go, yes, well, I'd like to write a book, but and then all the excuses will come out. The number of people who actually do end up writing a first draft of a book is actually quite small compared to the number of people who actually set out to do so. An awful lot of people like the idea of writing a book, but never kind of actually go through with it, because it turns out, and they find this out, that it's hard work. It takes a certain amount of time and energy to write a book and to make it work. And they'll probably become aware on the way through of all the pitfalls and all the things that are actually difficult to see. Because you kind of think, well, it's just kind of like a long story, right? You just sit down and start typing and it comes out. But you kind of have to have a plot. You have to have some characters that go somewhere. And all those other bits and pieces, as part of creating a really, really good book. Give them the mountain climbers answers because it's there. Yes, a lot of people don't want to be writing a book, but do want to have written a book. Yeah, jump to the end of the thing. I've written a book, and writing is one of those things you don't need a license for. And quite right. I mean, because you don't need to pass a qualification to be a writer. Okay. Or an author, and I'm using the terms a little bit interchangeably. Some people say, are you an author or a writer? And I go, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, a writer is somebody who writes, right? So in my head, an author is somebody who authors. I don't know what that means. So clearly, somebody who's written something. So if you've written anything, then you're obviously a writer. I think if you've written, something of length, then maybe that's now. Have you turned your writing into a book? That probably makes you an author. I would say. I kind of, an author to me is somebody who's written a book and somebody else has read it and gone, yeah, that was okay. That to me is what an author is. Okay, I think you have to have got past the writing stage and turned it into something that somebody else has therefore consumed. To be an author, I have no issue with self-publishing or formal publishing or any of those sort of things. That's irrelevant to being an author, I think. I think somebody else has to have consumed your writing for you to be an author. I kind of think that's kind of how that may not be right. I mean, I don't know. So that's the thing. So again, is there lots of money in it? There might be, but probably not. Is it hard work? Yes, it is. Is there a whole bunch of stuff you need to know in advance? Well, there's not a set of qualifications you need, but there are a whole bunch of things it's really, really, really advisable to know about before you start writing a book. A lot of that is just the lingo. Okay, so you'll hear about things like pansters and plotters. What does that mean? You hear about grammar. You'll hear about points of view. You'll hear about pacing. You'll hear about dialogue. All these sort of things. Okay, we'll go into those in depth in future shoots. They're all parts. So there is a kind of a language to talking about writing. First draft, second draft, third draft, copy edits. Beta readers. Stances, acts, beats, and all these sort of things. There is some lingo associated with writing, which is it'll take you a little bit of time to navigate, but it's not all that difficult and it's not all that impenetrable. So don't feel intimidated again when people start talking about, oh yes, well of course I've got the pacing and the point of view aspect completely done. Yes, I did that in the early draft. Yes, and any serious writer should have done that by the time the second draft comes around. And you kind of think, it's just don't worry about it. Okay, just people being people. But there are stuff about crafting a novel which it's worth knowing about, and we will go through those on the streams bit by bit, because if you aren't aware of them, there are basically common pitfalls to fall into. Okay, and things that you will get wrong, which basically kind of scream new writer, and it's worth learning those things, if you can, before you start spending a serious amount of effort creating something, because the problem is, and writers by their very nature are very okay, let's take me. They love the sound of their own voice, all right? You may be surprised. Okay, writers are generally pretty egocentric people, all right? They love talking about themselves. They love talking about their novel. They love talking about they love sitting in front of a camera and talking for hours on end, hoping somebody's listening. So they're quite. Probably egocentric is a bit harsh, and self-centered is the wrong thing. But you know what I mean? They are people who consider themselves quite important in their own universe. Does that make sense? I'm not sure quite what I'm trying to say. But writers are they're quite egotistic. That's but in kind of in a good way, not in a I'm better than you kind of a way. They're just focused on themselves and what they're trying to do. Okay, they're enthusiastic about the things that they want to create and things that they want to write. Okay, as a result, there is a big, strong tendency for writers to go, everything I create is amazing. Okay, it is without fault. It is perfect. It is wonderful. It's beautifully crafted. Come and admire my writing because isn't it a glorious thing? And unfortunately. One of the first things you have to learn as a writer is that most of the stuff, particularly early on, that you generate will be crap. Okay, small trade secret. Okay, it will be rubbish, particularly early on. Don't be under any illusions that it's going to be brilliant straight out of the bat. It won't be. It really won't. That's not a bad thing. Okay, going back to my violin analogy, right? Okay, so you're for those of you who are parent, your 6-7-year-old picks up a cheap violin that he got from school. Look, Dad, I've been given a violin. And the proper parent side of you goes, that's wonderful, son. Oh, play us a tune. What can you play on the violin today? I can play Three Blind Mice. And I don't know, that's a song that everybody else knows. But it's a very, very, very simple melody with 3 notes in it. And your good parent is basically going, oh, that's lovely. Play me that. And your actual internal monologue is, oh my God, my 6-year-old's got a violin. This is going to be utterly dreadful. But you smile and cringe your way through it. But to the 6-year-old, they've got a violin, right? And they're playing a song. It's amazing. And writers are exactly like that. Okay, the thing that they've just been working on is brilliant. All right, and it takes a while. Okay, it takes a while for a new writer to get enough experience to be able to critique their own work effectively. All right, could be worse. Could be a recorder. Yes, recorder. Why do they give kids recorders? It should be banned. It's terrible. But it's that sort of thing. Becoming objective about your own work is quite hard. Okay, and I look back on stuff that I wrote 10, 15 years ago, remembering that at the time I thought, I've gone through this. It's well edited. I've got the spelling correct. I've done all the things I'm supposed to do as a writer. I think it's pretty darn good. And I look back on it now and think, oh my God, look at the state of that. It's awful. It's the wrong pacing. The dialogue's cheesy. The description is long-winded and it's got way too many words. The pacing is so sluggish. It's awful. And I can see a billion ways to improve it. Okay, I can see a billion ways to improve it now. But 15 years ago, I thought it was great. I thought I'd done a really, really, really good job. You get better. Okay, you get better. You get better quite quickly. If you keep writing. So that's the other thing to take away from this is you've got to keep at it. Okay, you've got to keep writing to keep your experience, your tools, your ability sharp. It's like anything else. If you were a great, let's go back to the violin. If you become a great violinist and then you put your violin down for 2 years, you're going to lose some of that ability. You just are. Okay, so you've got to keep your expertise practice. It's like running. If you stop running for a couple of years, having done a marathon, you can't just go and run a marathon again. You've got to build back up to it. Writing is the same. It's a skill that you have to keep sharp and keep polished. The recorder is Satan's instrument. It is. I know nothing about bagpipes, but I think it's probably quite hard to make them make a noise. I don't know. I've never. I'd like to try a bagpipe actually. Something that I will. These days, I'm going to give it a go. So bear in mind that it is a craft. Okay, it is a craft. You need to learn it. You need to apply it. And you need to kind of take it a bit seriously. I'm not trying to put people off with that, but if you want to be a good writer, you've got to put some work in. You've got to practice, and most importantly of all, you've got to get your work in front of people who are not just going to say that's lovely. Okay, so your immediate family and your immediate friends are probably going to be way too polite to give you any useful feedback on your story. Okay, so here's the first thing. Don't bother getting your friends or your parents or your children or whatever it happens to be. Don't inflict your novel on them. You need to get it out to a wider audience. It doesn't really care if they offend you a little bit. Okay, and as a writer, you're going to have to develop a little bit of resilience when it comes to people going, "No, I didn't really like it. I thought it was derivative rubbish." You're going to have to cope with some criticism because there will be criticism. All right, there will be criticism. Some of it will even be completely unjustified. I've had people critique my work, critique me. Have very, very hostile things, accusing me of all sorts of nefarious, quite cynical promotional activity. Oh, you're only doing that because of this. You're only doing that because of that. You're only doing that because, and actually, no, I'm just telling stories, right? That's what I do. Oh no, you're a shill for this. You're a shill for that. You'll get all sorts of accusations. Okay, you'll get all sorts of accusations for doing what you want to do, because people are very cynical. People are very cynical. It's a bit of a disease of the modern times, I think. But you can get some very useful critique from certain places. So hopefully this stream would be one. Okay. And we have done in the past. We've invited people to to bring their stuff in. I'm quite happy to do that again. We can take a look at it, and we will critique it in a fair and an even-handed way. If you're interested in that sort of thing, and there are, and as Commander Theraphomo says, Glenn, there are a few places you can go to for good critique, and they will provide you with here's what you can improve. Here's where it's not working. Here's where it's things. And you need that, okay? You need people who are basically going to tell you the truth. To say, actually, this is a long way away from being ready. I can see where you're going with it. I like the idea, but this dialogue is cheesy. This description is too long. This pacing is off. This point of view is confused. All of the things that make a good manuscript, okay? You need critique. Critique chips off all the rough edges of what you do. And after a while, you'll learn the tools of critique and be able to apply it to your own work and go, I'm doing that again. And I've done this, okay? You know, a really, really good example. I was writing a book, a sci-fi book, and I had this amazing scene, okay? And I was really, really, really pleased with it. Got through my first draft, got through my second draft, and it's basically there's this young lady in charge of a busted spaceship, okay, and it's crashing on a planet. It's going down through the atmosphere. It's doomed. The ship is doomed. Okay, it's going to crash. There's nothing she can do to stop it. She's trying to keep the controls, keep the ship under some kind of semblance of control, but it's going down. She knows it's going to crash, and she's basically just trying to control the crash in the best possible way. And I've got all the flames travelling over the cockpit and bits of the ship flying off and the ship shaking, and there's the noise of rending metal and all those kind of things. Okay, it's all good stuff. That's fine. It was working quite well. And then I do this amazing scene, right? I do this amazing scene where the cargo in the hold of the ship, at the back of the ship, comes loose, okay, as the ship's shaking around and all this sort of stuff. And it's bouncing around the cargo bay and debris is smashing out and the cargo bay doors go bang because the debris hits them and it all starts trailing out behind the ship, and clearly the ship is in big distress and this stuff is making a huge rumbling noise. Really, really, really good description scene. My editor basically got that manuscript and put a big red X through the whole scene. And I was like, what? You can't do that. Okay. And she said, yes, your viewpoint, okay, the point of view through which you are telling the story at this point in time is your lady's viewpoint. She's in the cockpit of this spaceship. She can't see what's going on in the cargo hold. You can't jump to the cargo hold. There's nobody there. There's nobody to see the cargo coming loose. And I was like, you're right. I can't use that scene because there's nobody there. Nobody's there to see it. All she can experience, because that's where my point of view was at the time, is some noise. There's some horrible rumblings coming from the back of the ship. Clearly something bad is happening. She doesn't know what it is because she can't see what's going on. So I had to throw the scene away, and I've kept it on my hard disk. Maybe I'll use it for something else somewhere in my future. I haven't done so yet. But you sometimes have to make those sacrifices. You've got to be careful, and you've got to be there's things you need to learn about the things that you can and you can't do as you're constructing a novel and telling a story, which a good editor will pick you up on. And things like that. Some of them are big and obvious. Some of them are very subtle as well. And in learning those things is very, very important to the whole kind of aspect of crafting a novel. So Drew beat us well, but with love when critique goes over. So it's important. Okay, you need somewhat more experienced people to take a look at stories that you write and give you some honest feedback. Okay, because an awful lot of people won't give you honest feedback because they're scared of hurting your feelings, which is a completely understandable human reaction. Here's you've spent 6 months writing this book and you've given it to somebody, and they go, I don't like it, but I'm not going to tell him that. I thought it was excellent. And then you ask the obvious next question, which is, so what do you like about it? And you'll find people get really don't pin me down. So you need to have a circle of people around you, ideally, who can critique your work without being kind of too close to you, or who can who don't care about kind of no, I didn't like it, thought that character was awful, you just ripped off so and so, all that sort of thing. You need somebody who will be honest basically with you, who's not just going to give you a platitude and go yes it's amazing, really enjoyed it, because that doesn't help you. Okay, it doesn't help you get any better. If you go to a violin teacher and you play your Three Blind Mice at him and he goes, yeah, that was lovely, brilliant, I can't teach you anything. I mean, that's not what a violin teacher is going to do, is it? They're going to tweak the angle of your wrist as you're holding the violin. They're going to adjust your stance. They're going to adjust the angle you hold. They're going to say, no, you're not getting that note correctly. You need to move that up. You need to tension this. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. Now improve it. Now you need to up the tempo. etc., etc., etc. Okay, so they're going to teach you to be better, and you need to get better. You can start out with a lot of stuff, but you need to get better. You need to practice, and you need to work at it. Okay, I have this, I've had this conversation with my own kids, and I said, because one of them actually is really, really academic and really, really clever and bright. The other one is much more, kind of orientated to, hands-on stuff. And I've always had the conversation with him. I said, look, you can have talent. There's going to always be people in the world who are more talented than you. No matter what you do, where you go, how good you are at something, there's going to be people who are just naturally good at doing stuff. All right? There are going to be people out there who are very talented. But I'll tell you what, talent is something you may or may not have. Okay? Hard work is something that you choose to do. Okay? And hard work trumps talent. All right, hard work trumps talent. You can be a very talented writer, but if you haven't got the attitude to keep going, you won't get anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, talent is a nice to have. Okay, talent is definitely a nice to have, but hard work can fill in the gaps. Okay, if you work at it, if you push yourself, if you get onto it, if you graft for a bit, you will get there. Okay, all the writers who are successful are basically those that didn't give up. Okay, the writers who are successful are the ones who didn't give up, because it's hard. Okay, it is hard. You've got to push at it. You've got to work at it. You're going to be occasionally staring at a screen or whatever it is you're using to write your thing. You're going to just be going, I have no ideas at this point. I've got a blank page. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. Or you're just like, nobody's ever going to read this. Why am I doing this? The whole self-doubt thing. And we'll come into. We'll do a stream on mental health as well, because it's a very important part of being a writer is managing the mental health aspects of it as well, which historically haven't been talked about. But it's all part of it, so there's an awful lot there. But just work at it. If you've got a work ethic, you ultimately will be successful at some level. I'm not saying you're going to be J.K. Rowling or Tolkien or anything, but you will be successful. You will publish a book, okay, eventually, if you keep working at it. But if you give up and stop, whether you've got lots of talent or not is irrelevant if you don't put in the work. So work, okay, work at it. It's very important to keep going, and the longer you keep going, the greater your chances of success. And again, success. What do we mean by success? For some people, it's good enough to say, I wrote a book. Okay, I got it out there. There it is. It's a thing. I'm done. That's enough for me. Some people will be satisfied with that. For some people, success is no. I've landed a contract with Hodder and Stoughton, and I'm a New York Times on the bestseller list. That's what success means to me, and that's a very lofty goal, but it may be a goal for some people. I need to be a internationally famous writer that everyone's heard of. That's my definition of success. Other people's definition might be, I want my book to be turned into a TV series or a movie. I will have arrived if I manage to do that. And there's a sliding scale between all of those things in terms of what you think of as success. There is no specific definition of success for a writer. You set your own goal. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? That's fine. Do that. Don't compare yourself to anybody else, because they may not be looking at success in the same way you are. So your goal for what you want to achieve is entirely up to you to define. A successful writer is a phrase that doesn't really mean anything. The meaning is what you want it to mean. Some people might say, well, have you made some money out of your books? And it's difficult, because if you've sold any books, then you've made some money. I mean, let's say you make £10 or $20 or something. Okay, does that you've made some money out of your books? Was it worth it financially? Probably not, right? But you made some money out of writing a book. Somebody read your book and paid some money for it. So were you a success? How much money do you need to have to be successful? That's entirely up to you to define. So don't get too hung up on, I've got to sell 500 copies or it's not been worth it, or I've got to sell 20,000 copies or it's not been worth it, or I've got to make $1 million, I've got to pay off my mortgage, and I've got to live forever on the proceeds of my book to be successful. None of those things are true. They're all entirely in your gift to define as what is success. And also, what is a good book? Some people will define a good book as one that sells a lot of copies. That's not it's not a very good dare I say, it's not a very good definition of the word good. Is it a high quality novel? There's another thing. You could have the highest quality novel in the world, but if nobody reads it, is it any good? You could have a novel that sells 1 million copies, but is it any good? What does good mean in that context? Okay, so again, those are things that are very nebulous to define. What I generally advise people when I ask this question is, what's your motivation behind asking the question? Ask a question to answer a question. What do you want? What do you want to be able to look back on and say you've achieved? Is it fame that you're after? Is it money that you're after? Is it recognition that you're after? Is it just be able to say I did it and then go on and do something else? They're all valid. Define what it is that you want. What I would say is don't try and be something you're not. If you go into writing a book thinking I want to sell 1 billion copies of this and become New York Times #1 bestseller, you're setting yourself a very lofty goal. Now, it's not saying that you can't do that, but I would recommend enjoying enjoy the journey. Don't focus too much on the destination. Write a book and see how it goes. What do people make of it? Does it go down the bomb? Does it go down the storm? Or does it disappear without trace? And maybe refine. The other thing is don't go chasing genres or styles. So one of the problems early on that you're going to have if you start writing a book is if you want to go down a kind of traditional publishing route, you may have to write a story of the sort of stuff that's in vogue at the moment. Okay, so a few years ago it was wizards, right? Particularly young boy wizards. A few years before that it was vampires. Okay, God knows what it is now. But you know what I mean, okay? If you could write stories in those sort of areas, everyone was just, and publishers was like, well, stories about wizards clearly sell. So have we got anybody else writing stories about wizards? Yes, we have. Right, get them in there. We'll publish those. Okay. The problem with that kind of almost cookie cutter thing is that it's very hard to come up with something new because all the publishers are going, well, we don't want something new, we want something like the thing that's just sold because that's how we make money, right? And unfortunately it often does come down to money. So they'll publish something that's already been successful because the view is that another one of those will be successful as well. Now that's not always the case, and it's quite hard coming up with the new thing because nobody wants to take a risk on the new thing because in case it isn't the thing that is new and exciting, because we can't tell that in advance, right? Now my approach to that is just sort that for a game of soldiers. I'm going to write the stories that I want to write, and if people like them, great. If people don't like them, fair enough. It's no skin off my nose, literally, So I ignore genre boundaries. I ignore what's in vogue. I want to write what I want to write. Thank you very much. But I don't need my books to make a lot of money. I don't need my books to be bestsellers. I don't. That's not my definition of success. My definition of success is writing the stories that I want to write, that I've always wanted to write ever since I was, 13, and just keep doing that. And I've got a reasonable sized fan base, I suppose, that likes the sort of stuff that I write and looks forward to the next one that I write and will go buy that book when it turns up. That's okay. That's success for me. I'm doing the thing. Am I an internationally recognised author? No, I'm not. Am I retired living on an island in the Bahamas on the proceeds of my writing? No, I'm not. Am I on the New York Times bestseller list? No, I'm not. Have most people heard of me? No, they haven't. Some people's definition of success, well, it's just pathetic. You're not a writer at all. But that's not what I set out to do. Okay. I wanted to write what I wanted to write, and I don't want some publisher or some, online, I don't know, zeitgeist to tell me, you need to write a vampire book or a wizard book, because I'm not going to write a vampire book or a wizard book. I have no interest in following somebody else's path. I want to write my stories, and I'm staying true to that. That's what I do. Now, your definition of success and what you want to achieve with writing may be entirely different, and that's okay as well. Okay, so there's lots of things you can do with writing. You can make a searing commentary on our political and social environment if you wish to do so. You can use allegory to make a point if you wish to do so. You can juxtapose current affairs into science fiction in the future and make a commentary on that if you choose to do so. Or, like me, for example, you can just say, I'm just going to write the best sort of adventure-y story I can with no other preconceptions in it. That's, just trying to entertain people. That's a good thing too. All of those sort of things are fine, okay, depending on what you, as the writer, define as what you want to do. All I would say is try and stay true to yourself. I've had quite a few writing friends who've basically written the book, written the first draft, seconded it, edited it a bit, and come up with something which is a reasonable novel, and then they've gone through trying to get a publisher or trying to get an agent, all those sort of things, and they basically said, oh no, we can't sell that. You need to rewrite it. You need to turn it into something like this. You need to turn it into something like that. Then it will be a sellable novel. Then it'll be something that the market wants, etc., etc., etc. And some of them have gone, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give up. Okay, so some people do that, which is a shame. Others have basically gone, oh gosh, really? Okay, so I'm going to change the entirety of my story to try and match this preconceived idea of whatever it is that it's supposed to be, and have diluted or changed or adapted their story to try and fit into whatever that is, whatever's in vogue at the moment. And they've lost something in that process of trying to turn their story into a mass marketable item. They're chasing publications or chasing money, whatever it happens to be. And a lot of people have gone down that route. And then there's people in the middle who are probably a bit like me, who said, sod that for Game of Soldiers. It is what it is. Okay, that's the story I wanted to tell. That's the way I wanted to tell it. That's the story. That's what I've created. Editing is one thing, because editing is fine tuning what you've already got. Total rewrites because it's not in vogue or that's not the right genre stuff is a different matter. So my advice is stick to your guns. Stick to your guns. If you want to write something, if somebody won't publish it because it doesn't match their thing, then they're not the right publisher for you anyway. You've got self-publishing as an option. You've got indie publishers as things who might take a risk on a slightly more weird and wacky story. My Shadewood novels were rejected early on because they cross genres. So is it fantasy or is it sci-fi? Yes. No, it can't be one or the other. It has to be. It either has to be one or the other. You've got to put it into one of those slots. And I said, well, that's not the way I've written it. Well, you need to change it. Right. Okay then. Bye. So those are the sort of things that you need to be bearing in mind. There's all sorts of things that we'll go into a little bit more depth, but writing can be a huge source of joy. Writing can be a huge source of inspiration. You'll get to meet lots of other interesting people as well if you go along to conventions and listen to people talk about what they've done and all that. There's all that sort of exciting stuff to get involved with. But do not be under any illusion that it's not hard work. It is work. Okay, it's not just this joyful, I'm just going to write a novel. It isn't. Okay. And Chris Viking, yeah. So the best piece of advice I was ever given as a writer, and a long time ago now, the best piece of writing I was ever given was write the book you want to read. Okay. Because you may have read other authors' books and thought, wow, this was really good. I enjoyed that. And I want more of that sort of thing. If that's what gets you going, then write more of that sort of stuff. Make it up yourself, or pinch somebody else's characters and plagiarise it. But write the sort of novel that you want to read. Okay. Now, the sort of novel that I like reading, there's some that come very, very close. But there's nothing that I've ever read that is exactly like the stuff that I create, because that's my kind of uniqueness that hopefully I'm adding into the worldwide marketplace of books. Write the book that you want to read. if you're excited about your story, you're excited about writing it, that will come across when people read it. And they'll go, oh yeah, he's got this and got that, it's exciting, and this is happening and that's happening. ZX81 says, can you define internationally recognised for me? Do you mean internationally published or your name? I think I'm kind of, in that case, I'm probably mostly referring to the name. I mean, nowadays, if you publish something on Amazon, it's kind of internationally published anyway because it appears in all sorts of areas. So you do get a choice which geographies you publish in, but most people just go everywhere. And so internationally published is quite an easy thing to do. Internationally recognised by your name. Does somebody know who insert author's name is in a wide number of places? That to me is probably what I mean by internationally recognised. And genre mashing. You see, now genres are basically categories. Okay, that's all they are. There's nothing clever about a genre. Okay. Oh, I write in a specific genre. All it means is somebody's categorized your work and put it into a bucket called this. That's all it is. There's nothing magical and mystical about a genre. Okay, so and genres are arbitrary things, totally arbitrary. Somebody somewhere along the line has gone and says that's steampunk, that is space opera, that is romance, that is historical fiction, that is this, that is that, and then somebody will write something else, and then it will straddle the line between the two categories, and they have to invent a new category. They don't mean anything. They're only useful for people who like categories, right? Now, publishers and agents do quite like categories because they can basically say, it's this type of book, so therefore it will appeal to this type of person, therefore we can sell this many copies of it. That's what they're for, okay? They don't serve the writer at all, really, other than, connecting them through that process. Now, I wrote a science fiction series which has a fantasy style. So when somebody says, is it science fiction or fantasy? I say yes, because it is, all right? It totally straddles the two. It takes tropes from both. Does it have magic in it? Kind of. But you said it was science fiction. Yes, it is. But how can it have magic in it? Well, from the perspective of some of the characters, it is magic, but it isn't actually magic. So it depends on your point of view. What do you mean? Well, it's a slightly more complicated story. It's not just a fantasy novel. It's not just a science fiction novel. It's it's something more than that. Okay, it's a bit more cerebral, so we say. It's got a little bit more thought to it. It's not just a derivative novel. Be careful of genres. Now, you might want to write for a genre because it will make your book more appealing to an agent and a publisher who are a bit more probably traditionally set in their ways and say, look, we want more fantasy books, or we want more historical thrillers, or we want more detective books, because or we want more romance books. If you want to write for a publisher's kind of area of book selling, if that's your aim, then you need to think about that in advance. Okay, what's selling best at the moment? Let's say it's romance novels. Therefore, I'm going to write a romance novel because I want to be successful as an author and make lots of money. Okay, if that's your aim, that's fine. But if your aim is to write a story that you want to write, then completely ignore the whole genre thing, okay? And write whatever it is that you're trying to write. If you invent a new genre as a result, that's fine. The genres are not cast in stone, okay? There wasn't a time, 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago where somebody said, right, okay, the genres are... Here they are. Let's chisel them into these stone tablets. There's science fiction. There's romance. There's historical thrillers. That's it. The genres have been defined. And I'm going to leave these great big stones in the desert for people to dig up in 100 years' time. That's not what genres are, okay? They're just labels. They're just categories. And like any other category, sometimes the categories don't serve the purpose that they're for. It's like the argument with for those of you who are into astronomy. It's like we used to, when I was a kid, we used to have 9 planets. Okay, so Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Okay, now the astronomers at some point in the 2000s basically said, yes, well, planets are. Here's a category of planets, and Pluto doesn't count anymore. Okay, so Pluto gets demoted and is now a dwarf planet rather than a planet. Pluto hasn't changed, all right. Just because the International Association of Astronomers has decided that it isn't a planet anymore, it's now a dwarf planet, it's in a different category. Pluto does not care. No, we're doing the other planets, right? They are still the same things that ever they were. Okay, so the categories are not reality, right? They're just labels that somebody somewhere made up, and a few other people have basically agreed with and gone, well, that's maybe a helpful thing to allow us to organise things and say what kind of book it maybe is. They're not laws, okay? They're not laws. You are a science. That book of yours is science fiction. That's it. End of. Because the problem with genres is people go, and I've had this with mine. Is it science fiction or fantasy? And I say yes. No, it has to be one or the other. I say no, it doesn't. I said, well, I don't like fantasy. So if it's a fantasy book, I don't want to read it. But you're judging a book on the genre before you've even taken a look at it? Really? Yeah, no, I don't like fantasy. Well, how do you know? So be very wary of the genre straitjacket, because it's a dangerous thing. Okay, it's a dangerous thing. Pluto was not in the right genre. No, exactly. I'd always check to see if there's a Waygoer in the bookshelves locally here in Southern California. I've not found one yet, but maybe one day they'll appear. I'll sneak over there and just stick some in the bookshelf. So is Pluto a planet or a dwarf planet? Yes, exactly. You can argue, and people do. Okay, I've seen academics in publishing and conventions arguing about the difference between science fiction, sci-fi, and SF. Okay, as if that argument had any use whatsoever. Genuinely, and not even though like a silly argument over a beer at a bar, an actual proper argument. Okay, an actual proper argument about science fiction versus sci-fi versus SF. And that's the stupidness of the whole genre. It's meaningless. It means nothing at all. And people will string complexity around it to make themselves look knowledgeable and clever and smart, when actually it's just a load of bunkum. Write what you want to write. Okay, write what you want to write. And as a reader, don't reject a novel just because it's not necessarily in a genre that you're familiar with. That whole thing. I like science fiction, but don't like fantasy. Really? You sure? Or I don't know. I don't like romance novels. Or I don't like science fiction because they're too techy. Well, you're prejudging. Not all science fiction is the same. Not all fantasy is the same. Not all romance is the same. Not all historical thrillers are the same. These categories actually often work against the reader and the writer, I find, by cutting people off from books that they otherwise would find interesting to read. I've read some very interesting books that I would probably have shied away from if I'd taken notice of the genre that they were in. So just be careful. So that's quite interesting. So just be careful about there are an awful lot of things about the process which can trip you up. Now, what I would say, if you're out there listening to this stream going, oh God, he's really throwing me off this one now, don't be discouraged. Okay, there are hopefully people like me and other people around on Twitter and the internet and various other places, and writing clubs and writing groups and all sorts of places where you can find encouragement. Do spend time with other people. If you're a writer, it's hard to be a writer on your own, okay? Because you do need the encouragement. You do need, people around you who will give you encouragement and kind of, the things you're going through. Yeah, we go through them too. The discouragement and the self-doubt and all those kind of bits. It's good. I mean, it may not come across it, but I'm quite an introverted person naturally. I like spending time on my own. I get my best, that's how I recharge. I'm an introvert generally. I like meeting people though for a certain amount of time, and I like interacting with people and talking about books and talking about things I'm interested in, because I find it fires me up about writing more stuff. So if you have a writing group locally, do get involved with it. If you don't have one locally, but you can get on Twitch streams and internet things and podcasts, and go listen to them, because you're going to pick up all sorts of bits and pieces about it. It's interesting, meet other like-minded people, get along to conventions and see what it's all about and see what's going on, and meet a few people and listen to other people talking about the creative process and various other bits and pieces. There's an awful lot to learn. But it can be a very, very exciting thing to do. And we desperately do need more stories. We do need new authors coming in to write new stuff and go through that process of building stories and outlining things. If your ambition is to get on the television and have your book turned into a film or something, you've got to start somewhere, right? Anything that ultimately appeared on Netflix or Amazon or 20th Century Fox or anything like that had to start somewhere with somebody writing something down. So these things have to start. Now you may or may not get there, but give it a try. So do take encouragement from the fact that there are an awful lot of people who like reading new people's work, and if I can help you move along into those kind of places in any way, in terms of encouraging you to write stuff, then please do. Take the encouragement. It's really, really good. Do you want to be a writer? So it isn't necessarily a path to riches and glory. It might be, but it probably won't be. There is a lot of hard work involved. There's a lot of stuff to learn. So be prepared for a process which takes you from early days through getting better, learning some things, learning some techniques, practicing and put them into practice, and building up your craft. Don't expect to master it overnight, because you won't. Build upon it over time. Find places where you can get some critique. Find other authors who hopefully maybe at the same sort of stage as you are, and exchange notes with them and just find out what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. If you can find some more experienced authors who will help out, that's a useful thing to have. That's the kind of thing that I'm trying to do, I suppose, now. And take the encouragement from them, and then just keep at it. Just keep at it. Writing a book is very much a marathon and not a sprint. You've got to be in it for the long haul. If you think about, to give you some timescales, let's take a fairly long book of, let's say, 100,000 words. Okay, if you are writing 5,000 words a week, you're doing very well. Okay. 5,000, let's say 5,000 decent quality words a week, you're doing very, very well. That's a pretty reasonable output. Okay, and that's going to take you 20 weeks. Okay, 20 weeks to get a first draft of your novel. So that's nearly half a year to get a decent draft of the novel. Editing that novel is going to take at least 50% of that time again. Okay, so you're talking another 10 weeks of editing and tweaking and fixing and rephrasing and checking and redrafting to get your novel into a vaguely good state where it could basically go then to a professional editor who can then go back and give you a whole bunch more corrections to do. To create a novel, you're talking about that sort of length of time, that sort of length of effort. Now, if you are running a day job, if you can crank out one book a year, you're doing very, very well. Okay, if you've got a day job and you can crank out a decent length book in a year to a good level of quality, you're doing quite well. All right, that's the set expectation. Now, if you've got all the time in the world, you can probably crank out a novel every 3 to 4 months if that's all you're doing. Okay, but life will get in the way. So temper your expectations. You are not going to write a massive book all that fast, because you just can't do it. It physically takes a lot of time and energy and thought and all the other bits and pieces. So the amount of time that you have to dedicate to it is an important thing. So don't beat yourself up if you're you're looking, well, it's going to take me ages to write this thing. That's probably quite normal. And you will speed up a little bit as you go on, because you'll get more practiced at the things that you have to do, and your quality will improve, so you'll have less editing to do at a later stage. But that comes with time. Now, some people are blessed with just being able to go on the keyboard and the novels come out, but most of us aren't like that. You'll stop and start and go, I'm not sure how to fix this bit, etc., etc. It's tough. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and that's before you factor in all the stuff that you have to do before you start writing the book, like what characters am I going to have? Where is this place that I'm writing in? What's happened before the story starts? What happens after the story ends? Who am I going to kill off? All those sort of things that what's the plot? What happens in this story? All those things you've got to try and work out in some fashion. Now, some people will do that on the way through, and some people will do it in advance, and we'll talk about some of those things in future streams. It takes time. It takes a lot of time to write a book, so don't expect it to be something that you can just do quite quickly, because it's going to consume a fair bit of time, particularly if you've got a day job. Writing around the edges of it is hard work, and it's quite mentally tiring as well. You will put a lot of your soul and emotion into a book. Bear that in mind whenever you pick up a book and read it. You are looking into a little bit of the psyche of the person who wrote it. Okay, so they blood, sweat, and tears went into the creation of a book. Okay, and as the reader, you're in the receipt of that emotional input that the writer put in the first place, and you will sometimes pick that up through the books. You can see that the writer worked hard to get this together, and that emotional reaction you have to a book, the writer had to put that in. So they've drained themselves of a certain amount of energy, and then you, the reader, are picking it up. Sometimes a deadline. Yeah, that's a good point actually, to Sean, about deadlines. Sometimes a deadline can be a useful thing to, motivate you, prompt you to. I've got to get some stuff done this week, because otherwise I'm not going to meet my quota of words, or I'm not going to finish the novel in time for my plan. Now, I personally find deadlines and targets quite useful. Other people find them incredibly, incredibly stressful. Okay, and if that's the sort of person that you are, you may find yourself completely demotivated by having those kind of things and missing them. So be careful to say, I will finish my novel by the end of July, or whatever it happens to be, because you may find that a horrible pressure which will take all the joy of writing away from you. Your book will be ready when it's ready. Okay, now if you can work to a time scale in the program, then great, but if you can't, don't force it, because it's a creative endeavor. You're not writing a report for your boss, right? You're not finishing a project that has to be done on budget, on time, blah blah blah. You're writing a novel. It's a creative thing. It needs to flow. It needs to be what it is. So don't try and put too many arbitrary deadlines in if it's not useful for you. So just be careful. The deadlines we had for the 9 streams of consciousness really helped me. Having a deadline makes me lazy. Know yourself. Some people find it stressful. Some people actually need it because otherwise they're lazy. And that's knowing yourself. Okay. Steve Shaw, the deadlines are useful and stressful but worthwhile. Listen to the man. There you go. Great to have worked with. So Stephen Glenn worked with us on the 9 streams of consciousness, and we had to crack the whip to get things done. Sometimes that's the case. Mad Monksoft is quoting Douglas Adams there. I love deadlines. I like the whooshing sound they make as they go by. Douglas Adams missed many deadlines. Very successful author, obviously. So there we go. So those are the sort of things. So do you want to be a writer? Go for it. But don't be under any illusions that it's easy or it's a road to success just like that. It's going to be a best-selling author tomorrow, because the chances are you won't be. But that's no reason not to write. If you've got a story in your mind, in your head, in your heart, whatever it happens to be, that just demands to be told, get it down, get it out there, and get it in front of some people who can help you turn it into something cool and amazing. If you've written things from childhood, or you still write things today, get them down on paper, get them out there. One of the saddest things I've ever heard, actually, and I've heard this from 2 separate people, is that they write stories, and I go, oh, that's great. So what's it about? And they give me a vague kind of outline of, oh, that sounds really, really good. Can I read it? Oh, no. I don't let anybody ever read my stuff. And you're kind of like, that's really sad, because you've gone to all that trouble of writing a story and it's never going to see the light of day. So there is a whole bunch of things about that. Now, if you're a totally private person, you don't want to reveal it, then again, it's fine. But I would so encourage you to find a way to get it out there, because look at and I suppose look at the reasons why you don't want other people to read it. Is it it's just a private story for you, which is fine, or is it I couldn't stand the thought of somebody going, actually no, it's rubbish. I've met quite a few people who I think, from the way they tell stories in verbally to me, sound like they can tell a perfectly good story, and yet they've written the story. It's on a manuscript, it's on the computer, it's in a document. It won't see the light of day because there's something stopping them from going to the next step. You've got to develop, if you want to get a story out into the public and have people read it, you've got to go through that pain. Okay, you've got to go through the pain of, is it any good? All writers have to go through that whole, oh my God, actually now somebody's reading my stuff and they might not like it, they might hate it. You've got to go through it. You've got to go through that. Okay, because if you don't, you'll never know. It's like it's like the old I remember at school, I want to ask the pretty girl out. Okay, I want to ask the pretty girl out. But what if she says no? As my dad told me when I was like about 15 or 16, he said, yeah, but if you don't ask her, you'll never know, will you? So you lose no. If she says no, she says no, you've lost, it's not going to happen. But if you don't ask her, it's not going to happen, is it? So you might as well ask her. And I was like, yeah, but that's terrifying. He said, yeah, it is. But, look at the logic, son. Look at the logic. And you ask the girl out, and sometimes she does say yes. Quite a lot of the time she said no, but quite occasionally she did say yes. So it's painful. Okay, it is painful. You've got to go through that pain. Is my book any good? You will never know until you let somebody else read it. And you might be surprised. You might be, this is really good. What happens next? You just don't know. And it's my fond hope that streams like this and podcasts like this and all the other bits and pieces you can find out will encourage people to bring out their stories, because I've never read anything that someone's created and gone, this is totally unsalvageable. I've read some stuff which I thought, oh gosh, this does need quite a bit of work. But I've never read something where I thought, actually, this is totally and utterly boring and dull. There's nothing in here that I can see as interesting. There's always something, and if you can focus on that something and bring it out and improve it and teach people. I mean, the guys on the stream who worked with me on the 9 Streams of Consciousness, to start with, the stories needed quite a lot of work. Okay, they did need quite a lot of work. And we had to work hard at refining them and improving them and going through the editing process again and again and again and again to fine-tune things. And a lot of experience was gained and a lot of lessons were learned as a part of that process. And at the end result is, 9 different authors published a book. It happened. It was a thing. It occurred. They were published authors. That's it. They're done now. they can say they've done that thing. If you don't go through the pain, you don't get the gain. To use a cliche. Don't use cliches. Cliches are bad. In summary, then, it's not the simple, straightforward thing you might potentially be under the impression. It's a difficult, complicated, awkward thing to write a book. It's a lot of hard work, but it is worth it. If you're the sort of person who has stories in them that you want to tell, you'll find that they will just sit there and nag at you until you get them out in front of somebody else. And if you don't get them out of you and in front of somebody else, they'll sit there and they'll fester and they'll irritate you. So get them out, get them into the public domain. And see what you can do. So it's my fond hope this stream and this next series of streams, where we'll go through some of this in some detail, will help you to kind of come out of that thing and encourage a few more people to write stories, because we need more stories, we need more books, we need more good quality stuff, and from lots of different perspectives. not just people like me. We need different types of people, all sorts of different genders and genres and viewpoints and backgrounds, etc., etc., etc. So it's going to be quite interesting to see, if anything comes out of it. So let's see how it goes. Steve says, write the book and no one will read it, but how many people will read it if you don't write it? Exactly right. Anyway, that's that's probably enough of an introduction to this stream. So I hope you found that useful. If you're watching this after the event on YouTube, hello. Please feel free to comment, and we'll be running this. We'll see how it goes. It'll probably be at least a couple of months of these streams, and we'll see where it goes and see what people want to comment on. If you've got ideas for things that you'd particularly like me to cover, then do obviously let me know as well. Quite happy to incorporate those. Next week we're probably going to start looking at again, a bit like the previous set series, sort of common mistakes. Okay, the things that you really would be advisable to learn to avoid early on. Because there's quite a few things in that catalogue which scream new writer, and basically it will go against you if you try and approach a publisher with a novel. So we'll go through some of those next week, and we'll see how it goes. So take care, my friends. Be good. Have yourself a fantastic week ahead. I look forward to hearing exciting tales of of writing adventures that have now been fired off. So look after yourselves. Have a fantastic stream. I'm back on my Thursday, Friday, Saturday streams with my my space game adventures, which is very separate from what I do on the writing side. And we will be back next week. Be good. Look after yourselves, and obviously always keep writing. Keep writing. That's the important thing to do. Take care, my friends. Be good. And for those of you who've been watching on the stream who haven't felt that they wanted to comment, that's absolutely fine. Thank you for your company as well. It's been good to have you on board, and I hope you found something useful in the stream as well to take away. Take care, my friends. Be good, and I will see you soon. Bye bye now.